Spotify, the Stefs Rock Show. We got comedian, podcaster, voice actor, all the things. Craig Gass, thank you so much for coming by.
I'm excited to be here. I haven't been in Sacramento in 20 years, which makes no sense, and I'm excited to be
So
back.
that's what. So I'm driving my kids to Catholic school, listening to 98 Rock. Probably shouldn't have that combination, right? But I love Paul.
Mm-hmm.
And my good buddy Paul has you on, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I love Family Guy. You've done voice acting for Family Guy. I love Howard Stern, big Howard Stern show. So I was like, I gotta slide into his DMs and get him by the show. So May 7th, you're at Laughs Unlimited. That's really exciting. How did this come up? The Sacramento show?
Well, this is kind of silly, but I'm a huge sports fan. I book all my shows around the world around my favorite sports teams so that I can watch my favorite sports teams play in different stadiums. And I am one of 7 Seattle Mariner fans that are left on the planet. And they are playing in a minor league stadium in Sacramento this year whenever they play the A's. So I booked a show literally 5 days ago so I could make this happen. This happened once in Tokyo. The Mariners were going to do this special event where they're going to play a couple of games that were going to be considered part of the regular season in Tokyo against the Athletics. And it was a moment for one of our star players at the time, Ichiro Suzuki, to play his final 2 games as a player. I'm losing half the audience already who are music fans about this, but
no, that's okay. Honestly, the porn stars do the best, right? So if it's not about sex, I mean, nobody really cares, but we'll try. So wait, you from Washington, right?
I'm from New York, but I do watch a lot of porn. I watch porn 12 times a day. So if that is helpful to the porn audience. So
I'm a sex addict. So wait, but why do you like the Mariners? Like how did this happen?
My career started in Seattle. I started doing stand-up in Seattle, and I started doing radio with a guy in Seattle who was a really popular radio guy who I didn't know he had like national attention. His name was Bob Rivers. He had a show called Twisted Radio where he would do song parodies that were so popular. His song parodies would end up on the Billboard charts. Like he cracked the top 10 Billboard charts with his song parodies.
It was like Dr. Demento, Weird Al.
Exactly. Just like he had Christmas songs that he was really famous for. Walking around.
I never heard of him. I can't, and I love parodies, so I'm shocked.
Look up Walking Around in Women's Underwear.
Okay.
And I Am Santa Claus, which is a perfect song parody of Iron Man. I am Santa Claus.
That's awesome.
And so I started working with him, and within 2 years, I put a tape together, sent it to Howard Stern. Howard's producer called right away. His name's Gary Delabate, and he called me and said, "Hey, listen, so like, who are all these people that you're working with? Like, who are all the voices on this tape?" And I said, that's me. I'm doing all the voices on there. And he said, "Man, you Sam Kinison is like, we thought it was Sam Kinison. That's how good it was. And we'd love to have you work with us someday." So I started working for Howard, doing celebrity phoners on the Howard Stern show, calling as different celebrities saying awful shit. Then I started writing for the show. This is in 1998. I started writing for Howard. And when I started writing for Howard, I thought, man, I should probably move back to New York so I can be closer to Howard. So I moved back to New York City. I moved in with another comedian named Mitch Hedberg. I don't know if you know who Mitch Hedberg was.
Love Mitch. Rest in peace. He is out of this world, phenomenally smart.
He is brilliant.
The way he could set up a joke, his mind worked in ways that most people's can't wrap their brain around.
And he was a beautiful human being. And
did you do drugs with Mitch? That's all I want to know.
I did. I did coke with him. We drank together. But we would, when he signed this huge $1 million deal, it was like near $1 million for this network deal that he had. He moved out of the apartment and moved into the Chelsea Hotel, which is where Sid killed Nancy. It's where a lot of famous poets have lived. And I think there was even a scene in that Bob Dylan movie I just saw where Joan Baez was living at the Chelsea and Bob Dylan came to visit Joan Baez. But when he got a ton of money, I started hearing stories about him getting into heroin. And I was like, I don't think that's true, man. I've never seen him even talk about heroin. People are like, no, man, he's really. And then the stories just got worse and worse. And then, you know, I always say he was like one of the best people I've ever met. He was like such a perfect human being. He was very kind, very selfless, very funny. He was very independent. He loved to cook. He just had one flaw, and that one flaw is the one that killed him. But I moved in with Mitch in 1998 in New York and started writing for Howard, started writing for Weekend Update for Saturday Night Live. I was a contributing writer to Weekend Update when Colin Quinn was doing it. And then in 2001, Jackie quit the show. I started sitting next to Howard. And then everything started changing. I ended up on a bunch of New York stuff, Law and Order, Sex and the City. I started doing King of Queens, and everything just started happening. And then eventually Family Guy, American Dad, and then now back on the Howard Stern show for the first time in 20 years. So,
dude, that's so sick. I remember growing up, and I started college in radio in 2004, and Howard Stern was my idol. I got an internship at Playboy Radio in 2008, and I thought I was going to be Howard Stern at 21 in a year. You know, I was like, I'm going to move down to LA, and I'm going to get girls naked on camera, and it's going to be the shit. I didn't realize how hard it is. We all have to struggle. Like, you get these cool little niche things where you get into an area and you're like, this is it, and then you'll drop back down for another couple years, maybe. Like, that's just how the business works, you know? And so
it's a series of ups and downs, and you have to really appreciate the valleys. I mean, this is what comedians always talk about. There are comedians that are way ahead of me, who are set for life financially, who have those moments of like, what have I done? Like in the last few years, I feel like I've done nothing. Everybody has those feelings. You just have to keep heading in the direction that you want to go, and you pick up things along the way. You just have to enjoy the ride. The ride is insane.
For sure. And pop culture, what's in, what's big, where the audience is. Like Theo Von, he's been working hard, but he really just popped up. The whole Rogan universe, if you're kind of next to them, that's what's on fire right now. But dude, I didn't know you were close with Mitch Hedberg. That's so sick. Have you tried heroin?
I did. I tried heroin. I snorted it. I remember I was backstage at a Metallica show in Vancouver, British Columbia. This would have been, I've been sober for 20 years. So I'm guessing this is probably 25 years ago. I remember I was backstage at a Metallica show in Vancouver. COC was opening up, and I was out by the loading dock at whatever that arena is called. It's next to BC Place. It's gone through a couple different names, but there's an arena right in
Who
downtown.
Offered it or had it?
I was standing out by the trucks and buses, and this guy was like, dude, can you get me into the concert? And I go, sorry, man. He goes, I'll give you some white. And I go, oh, how many of you are here? And he's like, just me. And I was like, all right, follow me. So I walk him in through the backstage area. I walk him into the floor, and I'm like, all right, you're good to go. You're right up against the stage. You're here. You're all set to go. And I go, do you have that white that you're talking about? He goes, yeah. And he hands it to me, and I go, and then I realize, oh, is this Coke or
White China or Coke? Yeah.
Well, I said, is this Coke or Crystal? And he goes, it's horse. And I go, it's what? And he goes,
I've never heard of it referred to as.
I go, what? It's what? And then he yelled out, it's heroin. And I was like, whoa. And I was like in front of a bunch of people. I was like, oh shit. Can I snort this? And he goes, yeah, you can snort it. He goes, but you can't snort a lot. Like, it's got to be a tiny bit. You can't snort it like Coke. And I was like, shit. Okay. All right. And then I remember I walked around and I was like, wow, I've never done heroin before. I wonder what this is going to be like. So I went up, found like a suite upstairs in the arena, and I put out, and he told me, he said, it's got to be like a tiny, tiny, tiny amount. So I snorted a little tiny amount and then walked around for like an hour or two, and I felt absolutely nothing. And I was like, you know what? There's not even that much in this package. So I went back up to the bathroom and I dumped the whole thing out and I snorted it in one line. And then
maybe it was more baby powder. Because I was going to say, I don't blame Mitch. We don't know if it was heroin or not, but I smoked it a couple times and it's been the best high of my life. I don't go back to it because I remember the high of smoking heroin, and I've done lots of drugs, right? But it was the most euphoric for me. And I never snorted it though. I think that's too dangerous to fuck around.
Did you get sick at all?
No, but I left the party. I'm very social. I usually stay in the party. I left the party both times, and I sat outside by myself and looked up at the stars, and I'm like, everything's perfect. Everything's great.
Wow. I remember getting that euphoria the first time I did Coke. I remember the first time I did Coke, I remember I was 15 years old, and I remember telling my friend, I know that people always say bad things about cocaine, but did they ever talk about how good it is? Because this is amazing. I loved the conversation I was having in that moment. And I was so euphoric just talking. I was euphoric just talking. And then you realize, like anybody else that's come before you, you end up on that same ride where you're like, holy shit, what an amazing experience that was. I want to do that again. And you keep revisiting, and it gets worse and worse and worse. And then the high is shorter, and then the pain is longer. And then you end up being like everybody else because you're a human being. And that's what happens. And but with that heroin, that I started to feel like I was super drowsy. I felt like I was underwater. I was sitting on a bus. with somebody talking, and I felt like I was kind of getting drowsy. And then I got nauseous for about 48 hours. And I kept throwing up. And then friends of mine who had been into heroin told me, well, that's what it's like. You have to get sick, then you get the high. So I had never smoked it though. So,
Wow.
But yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite topics because drug addiction almost killed me. I had a heart attack when I was 32 years old. And
holy shit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it scared me.
I had a seizure. I OD'd on ecstasy, cocaine, and scotch for 2 days. And I had a seizure and it was in the hospital for a couple of days. Went right back to drinking 30 days later and doing drugs. I'm still on it. But I'm okay now, right? This was back in Hollywood when I lived in LA and was dating Slipknot and out of control. Now I'm very like, I have my beer, here and there. But like and it's Tuesday, middle of the day. But I will say it fascinates me how much the rock and roll world and the comedy world is more interconnected than some people understand. There's a lot of addiction. The funnier, the quick wit, the overactive brain. Sometimes you want to slow it down with drugs and alcohol, and music and art and comedy is all one and the same. And so there's a lot of addiction with both genres and porn stars, right? Like I like interviewing all of these people because they've all been through trauma and they've turned their trauma into gold. And then now that I'm really old, they're either dead or highly successful. It's one or the other. Yeah.
Well, or they're sober. I mean, you have to at some point get sober or die or go to jail.
I went to jail and I OD'd and I haven't got off the wagon. So
I had the first year that I got clean 20 years ago, 7 of my friends died. And they were all comedians. 4 drug overdoses. The first was Mitch in March of 2004. And then, March of 2005, he died because it was just the 20-year anniversary. And then there were 6 other comedian friends of mine who died. 4 drug overdoses, 3 drinking and driving car accidents. And every one of those deaths were just this like harsh reality that I could never try to convince myself, you know what, if I could just moderate what I'm doing, then I can, because I'm not capable of moderating anything. And that's just something I have to admit to myself. I can't
That's why you're successful though, on one hand, because you push forward and you push the boundaries and you keep going and you get in that door. But then it's hard when you put substances with that mentality, you're going to go overboard.
Also looking at why you put some substances in your body in the first place, like when I have challenges or I'm being frustrated with life, I know that doing drugs or getting fucked up is going to make life 100 times harder. It's when I get success and cool things start happening to me that something in my brain wants to self-destruct, and subconsciously I want to make things more difficult for myself because I don't think I deserve the attention or
I get that.
The praise from people. I feel like I'm unworthy on
100%. Did you have shitty parents? I had shitty parents that both ended up walking out of my life as an adult. And so I kind of got verbally abused, all kinds of abuse. So it's hard when, even though I acted and danced and did all this shit growing up, I like can't talk about a lot of accomplishments, or I don't like to brag, or I think like, oh, I haven't done anything or enough. Like it's hard for me to.
I definitely relate to that. In fact, that's like that's a situation that's coming up a lot with friends who want me to hang out with their friends. I don't like doing that anymore because, and this isn't exactly the question you're asking me, but I love being a stranger. I love being like a friendly stranger to people. I'm the person in every elevator that loves to have a 30-second conversation with you.
I feel that.
And but once I started doing stuff on TV and I started doing stuff that people knew about, then it kind of changed the dynamic. I was no longer a stranger to some people, and it made me uncomfortable when friends would be like, hey, is it okay if this other person hangs out with us? He's a huge fan of yours. And I would go, not really. I don't like that. I don't like the idea of somebody hanging out, and I have a feeling it's not going to turn out well. And then it usually does lead to awkward moments. Like we're all just hanging out, having fun. And then someone will look at me and go, what would Tracy Morgan say about the situation? And I go, I don't know. You have to ask Tracy. Like, they want me to do an impression for him or something, you know? And
yeah, no, when you're off the clock, you just want to relax and be yourself.
Exactly.
And so it's a different, I don't know, like, because I've interviewed rock stars so much, I don't get freaked out anymore, but I understand they don't want to be bugged. There's only one person I'm a fan of that I've wanted to peg for several years, and it just happened. And it's because they're gay comedian. And I was like, it's never going to happen. And because I got to finally peg this person, I was so excited. And I was a little giddy schoolgirl.
And they're a comedian and you got to peg them?
Yeah, they're gay. They had a Netflix special just come out, and they're a pretty good podcaster. And I've been joking on the radio for years about wanting to peg this person. And finally it got back to them because I had one of their openers on and I got to peg him, and now we're friends. And so that's the only time I've been like a friend. Who could you guess? Could you guess?
I have a couple ideas. Does he also sing during his stand-up?
He like does some Broadway singing, like he's a little bit larger.
Oh.
Yeah, no, he's thick. He's big.
Oh, he's thick.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, he's mentally unstable like me.
Is he bald?
No. He's in the Joe Rogan, Theo Von buddies.
Oh, get the fuck out of here. Not Tim. Did you peg Tim?
Yes, that's my boy. Now I'm upset. Like, I love him. And
no,
I'm pretty sure I'm not manly enough for him, but I've tried to be a top, you know, it's one of those things.
How was that experience of pegging him?
I don't want to go into detail, but I absolutely adore him. Like, I really do. It's the first time I went from fan to like, you know how you make a joke, it's not going to happen. Like, he's the biggest, like, I'm gay 24/7, but right. I'm bi. So I, you know, strap it on and make jokes a lot on the radio about that. And so I had Gabby Lamb on that was opening for him and saying, you know, I want to peg Tim Dillon. This has been my Make-A-Wish Foundation, pretty much last thing I want to do before I die. And she told him, and then he slid into my DMs on TikTok, and one thing led to another. And we are still talking. Like, I'm still, I want to do it again. Yeah. And he's a genius too, though.
I mean, that is, I'm sorry, I missed that last part you said. What was that?
He's a genius. Like, you know, he runs in Mitch Hedberg, just off the charts, overactive mind with ideas.
It really trips me out to hear him go into that when he downshifts into the salesperson that he used to be. And he describes what his sales pitches were like. I think he sold, I don't know. I remember what he was selling.
Mortgages. And he's political. I grew up in a very political family of attorneys and judges. And so I love talking about politics and wars for days, and his stance and what he knows about it. And the middle ground of both sides is like, phew. Sorry, I didn't mean to get all up on this, but I was just
not at all. We're not touching on anything I was planning on. And I'm loving all this conversation. We're getting right into drug addiction and family problems. And this is right in my wheelhouse. I do want to say that I think Tim Dillon is an aggressively intellectual guy, and I love that about him. And I love that we're not covering anything yet that I was planning on, because this is a very, very natural conversation. But drug addiction.
Yeah. Wait, you didn't tell me though, your parents. So did you have okay parents, or mom and dad, both good, one bad? What was your childhood like?
Well, my whole family's deaf.
I heard that. Okay, you said that. I forgot. And maybe that's why you got so good at voiceovers.
Yes, because growing up in a deaf family, I couldn't learn how to talk. I learned how to talk by watching TV, and I copied all the voices that I heard on TV. And parents got divorced when I was 4 or 5, and my mom used me as her interpreter for her divorce.
And that's fucked up.
Yeah.
That's good.
Well, I never went to court. Okay, so deaf people now have a relay service, which is like a FaceTime thing where they can talk to a hearing person and reach to the outside world, and the hearing person will make the phone call for you, and vice versa. If you need to get a hold of a deaf person, you call a person who's talking to you, and then they just relay like you're talking to the person. Before that was teletypewriters, which are these machines that you had to be a deaf person to have a teletypewriter. But she had somebody in the house who could hear, which was me. So she would have me call the lawyers at 4 years old. I was getting this huge vocabulary lesson. Plus, my mom's standing on top of me going, "Tell him your father's a son of a bitch." And I was like, "Okay, Mom, I'm going to fuck."
Character development, dude. Yeah. Character development.
My mom was a very affectionate and loving person who was flawed because she also had an addiction. and we are the same person. My mom and I are the exact same person. She passed away about 2 years ago, and I got to spend those last few months with her, and more importantly, the last 72 hours just at her bedside. We just kept saying, "I love you." This is I for I, L for love, and
Aw.
the Y for you. So it was just this: I love you,
I didn't
and
know that, like, almost rock on is I love you
I love you.
in
And then she'd
American
say it.
sentence.
And then as she started to fade more and more, she couldn't open her eyes. I would take my hand like this, and I would put it in her hand, and then she'd raise her other hand and do that until she couldn't do it anymore. And then
Oh, that's really sweet though. But
yeah,
like,
I think
okay, so that explains how you became a comedian though. That's a difficult situation. Did you have any siblings? You
yes,
know,
I have a
okay.
sister, and she's deaf as well.
So you're the only person, even siblings included, that is not
Yep.
deaf?
My mom was born completely deaf, birth defect. Dad was born with all of his hearing, lost over 75% of it as a kid. He got in an accident, popped out his eardrums. He had to go to deaf schools for the rest of his life. And that's where he met my mom at an all deaf high school. They had my sister first. My sister's born with my mom's genes, completely deaf. I'm born with my dad's genes with all my hearing. So I'm the only one in my family who can hear. And that's what led to me learning how to listen to voices and how to dial in. And I noticed that early on that we all kind of adapt to our environment. We all adapt to our volume and our goofy accents wherever we're from in the world. We adapt to our surroundings. And like, if you ever called your best friend when you were a kid and someone picked up the phone and you think it's your best friend, and it could be somebody else in the same house, it could be somebody the opposite sex of the same house, but they've all learned how to pick up the phone and go, mellow. And like those little nuances you learn as you grow up. And I didn't have anything to learn from. I just watched TV and I just copied all the voices I heard on TV. So that leads to being able to mimic any kind of voice that I hear, especially if it's a weird one, which leads me to radio, which leads me to Howard Stern, which leads me to Family Guy and American Dad and doing cartoons. And then most of the characters I played on TV on, King of Queens, or what are some of the shows? Like Sex and the City was a straight dramatic role. But they usually use some aspect of me doing impressions. But the reason I wanted to connect with you is because I'm such a huge music fan that I've done impressions of all my favorite musicians that has led me to, number one, irritating some of my favorite rock stars on the planet, and number two, getting to open and be the only comedian who's ever
To
opened
open for Metallica. I heard, and then also how you pissed off Gene Simmons, and I heard you do a great Gene Simmons impression on 98 Rock the other day. So can you tell my audience what happened with Gene Simmons and how like this riff happened?
Huge rock music fan growing up. I would watch Kiss interviews and just be like, man, I wish I was that cool. They were always so super confident. I remember there'd be interviews where, just the level of confidence where I remember somebody asking Paul Stanley, it was like a press conference, and they said, Paul, what makes Kiss so great? And Paul goes, a lot of bands are envious of Kiss. I'm even envious of Kiss. And I was like, oh, I wish I was that cool. And then I've seen interviews where Gene Simmons, and I know Paul Stanley happens to
I banged a Kiss cover band. That's the closest I got.
Did you really? The whole band?
At the Rainbow. Yeah. So I lived in Hollywood and I was a groupie for several years. That was like my kind of Penny Lane from Almost Famous, and that was, I wanted to get into radio to bang rock stars. That was the whole thing. And so, but I never got to meet Kiss or have them by the station. So I had to do the Kiss cover band. Kiss My Ass, I think was the name of them. And I got 3 out of 4. I didn't get the whole band.
Which band member impersonator did you not get? Was it the Peter Criss or the Ace or
It was the drummer. I was
Peter
originally dating Scott Griffin of LA Guns, was the Kiss My Ass bass player. And so like that is how, and then we broke up. And so I like moved through the other 2 guys to piss him off and then get back with him. I was in my 20s. Like, you're a dick kind of at that time.
That'll do it.
Yeah. So wait, what happened with Gene though? Like, how did that whole
so I started, I'm working on the Howard Stern show, and I just keep working my way up. I'm doing all these different voices, all these different characters. I started calling in it started originally as Sam Kinison calling in live from hell. anytime an asshole died, like someone we could all agree, all right, that guy was an asshole. Like that guy was not nice. Like Jeffrey Dahmer. When Jeffrey Dahmer died, I was the only person in America writing jokes and calling into Howard the next day as Sam Kinison, calling live from the gates of hell and going, "Hey guys, it's Sam Kinison, and I'm down here in hell with Jeffrey Dahmer, and this guy's already looking at my ass like it's a T-bone. Oh, oh!" and then I started doing 4 voices on the show. I started coming up with all these. The more Howard liked it, the more abstract the impressions got. Like, and this is a character that's coming back. 20 years ago, Al Pacino had a baby in his 60s. He had twins in his 60s. And I said, wouldn't it be funny if we had one of the babies on the show and they sound just like Al Pacino? And we would do this regular character where we'd say, hey, guess who's on the phone? It's Al Pacino's baby. Al Pacino's baby, what do you like to do for fun? All right. What do I like to do for fun? All right. I like to pee. You like to pee? I love to pee and suck titties. Hoo-ah. Like it was so abstract and so weird. And then I started sitting in on the show and sitting next to Howard. And during a commercial break, I was like, Howard, do you ever get into Kiss at all? And he goes, nah, I'm not really. And I go, dude, Gene Simmons is one of the coolest fucking guys. I got to tell you how confident. And I started telling him these funny stories about Gene. And then we go on the air and Howard goes, man, Craig is telling me these really funny. Tell me what you were just saying about Gene Simmons and how confident he is. And so I started telling these stories about Gene Simmons. And then it just became a character. And the only time I would use the character is every time we'd have a music guest in, I would constantly interrupt the music guest as Gene Simmons and try to sell them shitty Kiss products. And we didn't.
I like that.
We didn't know it at the time, but the real Gene Simmons actually started getting hate mail because of the shit I was saying on the Howard Stern show. And then I'd go to concerts and rock stars started recognizing me. I ran into Sebastian Bach at a concert, and Sebastian Bach was like, dude, I fucking have Gene Simmons stories for days. I went to his fucking house, and that guy has a fucking Kiss museum in his house, which is true. Gene Simmons had an entire wing of his house dedicated to every piece of Kiss merchandise that's ever existed. And Sebastian Bach goes, dude, I walk inside his front door, and there's like a bag with like 100 Kiss cell phone covers. And I said, dude, what the fuck is that? And Gene Simmons goes, that's our new promotion for Kissmas. That's our new Kiss cell phone covers. Can I have one of those? I wish I could, but if you go to kissonline.com, you can get it. And he wouldn't give him one piece of plastic.
One for free. I do feel though, if you're that successful, you're a narcissist in some sense. Like you believe in yourself to the ultimate degree, or they've also sold out as a brand. They're bigger than just a band, right? Like they're their own LLC company.
I will say this. He does have a generosity to him. I went to his house to film an episode of his TV show. And when I was leaving the house, which is a massive, massive property, one of the guys in the production van, I could hear him like on a radio, and he goes, hey guys, Craig's actually with us. He's in the van. Okay, we'll send him in. And he goes, hey, Gene wants you to go back in the house. He wants to talk to you for 1 minute before you leave. And I was scared because I don't ever want to be alone with him. And I said, just tell him we're gone. Tell him we left.
Was he going to shove his big tongue down your ass? What did you think was
I didn't know what I'm always afraid that he's waiting for a moment. Like he laughs at what I do and he plays along, but I'm always afraid that he's waiting.
He's Nancy Kerrigan you, like secretly. He's going to crack you.
And I walk up in the house and they go, meet Gene outside the Kiss Museum. So I go through his house and I go outside the Kiss Museum and he has a table set up with all this merch on it. And he goes, would you like some parting gifts? Would you? And I go,
does he do this to girls he fucks too? I wonder after he fucks them was like, would you like a party, like free merchandise?
He fucked me pretty good on that episode. He goes, would you like some what size shirt do you wear? Extra large? And I go, yeah. And he goes, do you want boxers? Do you want comic books? And I go, I'll take whatever you got, man, please. And he goes, hold on, let me get a bag. And he whips out a Kiss shopping bag. It's got a Kiss logo on it. And he starts filling it with t-shirts and comic books. And at one point I see he has baby clothes. He has baby onesies. And a friend of mine in Pearl Jam is a huge Kiss fan. I go, hey, question. you have baby clothes there. My friend Mike is he plays guitar for Pearl Jam, and he's one of your biggest fans. He just had a baby. Would it be okay to get a baby onesie for my friend Mike? And he goes, is that Mike McCready? And I said, yes. He's a good friend of mine, and he loves you very much. And he goes, you can have 2. Go ahead. I said, oh, thank you. And
that's like me when I fuck young guys. I send them home with fruit snacks, sometimes a Capri Sun, especially if they were really good and I want to give them a call back.
That's nice. Give them a little card, like give them a like, hey, come back again. That was fun.
It's weird how when you're young, you fuck older. And then all of a sudden, now that I'm old, I want to fuck younger. Like it's just switched up on that. Okay. So I wanted to too. I forgot, like, I loved talking about drugs and sex, and that's all my favorite. But you have a podcast on your own that I'm just discovering. I don't know how, I'm just getting in the podcast world, to be honest. So I left radio. Beardo and Weirdo with Chris of 5 Finger Death Punch. I love him. He babysat my older son 10 years ago. He didn't want to sit during interviews. So Chris, for an hour, rocked my older son. And I have cute photos of him in his dreads. And he's just a sweet guy. So how did you guys meet and create the podcast?
It actually goes back to drug addiction. When I met, so I was friends with Jason Hook, who was in his band.
Oh, I know Jason Hook. He's been by a couple times recently too. I love him.
Jason is one of my favorite people. I've known him for 25 years, back when he was in Vince Neil's band with another good friend of mine back in Vegas, Brent Fitz.
And Flat Black rocks. Shout out to Flat Black.
Yes, and now he's in Flat Black. And Jason and I would hang out. Well, that whole band, that was Vince's band, we'd all hang out every time they come to New York. And they would usually have a few days off when they would come to New York, and they'd come to comedy clubs. We'd all hang out. Jason and I stay in touch over the years, and he says, hey, I'm in this band, 5 Finger Death Punch. And through him, I met Chris Kale. Excuse me. I'm just getting over a cold. Chris and I kind of loosely stay in touch.
You just deep-throated like 8 guys in the hotel.
I did.
Get the Sacramento date. It's fine.
That's not mayonnaise.
Yeah.
So, and
I'm proud of you.
Chris and I
wonder how many people we both know. I like knowing you're in the rock world too, because like Jason and I have been friends since 2008. Like,
I'm sure. All my biggest supporters are in the music industry, which is why I've gotten to open for System of a Down and Corey Taylor and Motley and recently Pantera. They're all like my biggest supporters are like all these huge rock bands. They all have shown me the most vocal support over the years. So I've become friends with all my favorite artists over the years. But going back to Chris Kale, when Chris started to post online that he was struggling mentally, spiritually, he was struggling in every way with his drug addiction. He started posting, hey, I'm sober 22 days and I'm doing this one day at a time. Hey, I'm sober 23 days. And I was like, oof. I reached out to him and said, dude, I'm in recovery. And you don't want to publicize this. You don't want to publicize your days because you're so early. You are so early that you're still really susceptible to fucking up, and people are gonna laugh at you and mock you if and when you ever fuck up, and they're gonna think, well, recovery doesn't work. And when it comes down to you, like, recovery doesn't, you have to work it. You have to make an effort to change your life around. And it's not easy if you're a drug addict. So him and I started talking and helping each other out. And then we just formed this bond. And at one point he started mentioning that he wanted to do a podcast and I wasn't hearing it. My girlfriend had to tell me. My girlfriend was like, hey, he really likes it. Like, my girlfriend's the one who pays attention.
I like that. She's like the middle woman.
Dude,
of like, he actually likes you.
This week's episode is so fucking bizarre. The last person you would think, I would like to do something nice for Craig and surprise him and show up. It was Kerry King from Slayer surprised me this week.
Nice. Love Kerry. He was at Aftershock last year. And so we cover Aftershock backstage. And Kerry's a great guy.
And I got to tell Kerry to his face the backstory he doesn't know. I've known Kerry probably about 10, 15 years, something like that. I introduced my girlfriend to Kerry backstage at a Scorpions concert. We're standing in the dressing room with Skid Row, who's opening for the Scorpions. And Carrie says to me, like, yeah, man, we're not here anymore. We're not in Vegas. We moved to New York. And I go, oh, really? I'm in New York once a month doing shows. And he said, dude, you should call me. And I go, yeah, for sure. And he goes, no, seriously, man. Like, I want to hang out with you. And I go, oh, yeah, whatever. And then on the way out the door, I was like, all right, man, good to see you, Carrie. And he goes, hey, don't forget to call me. My girlfriend goes, I think that guy Carrie really likes you. And I go, babe, he's in Slayer. He doesn't have any feelings. And she goes, no, I could tell the way, like, you should call him. And I go, babe, he's in Slayer. He doesn't have any feelings. And she goes, no, the way he was saying, like, hey, man, you should call me. I want to
take it seriously. Actually text him, reach out.
Yeah. So I fight that with her. And then a couple weeks later, she goes, have you texted that guy, Carrie? He's so nice. And I go, do you have any idea what you're talking about? He's the guitarist of Slayer. He's not, there's no way he's a nice guy. And I'm saying that like in jest. I've known him and he's always been nice to me. So I text him and say, hey, dude, I'm coming to town next weekend. Do you want to come hang out for a show? And he wrote back immediately and said, oh, man, I'm out of town, with a bunch of sad emojis. And I went, and I screenshot that and I sent it to my girlfriend. I go, babe, the guy from Slayer sent me sad emojis. Like,
that's cute. He does care.
Yeah. So in this week's episode, I get to tell him that and more on this week's episode of Beard on Weirdo. And I don't think it makes Carrie very comfortable to hear these words, but it was fun being able to say it to him because, goddamn, that guy is a huge, huge comedy fan. And we got to talk about that a little bit. But Chris Kale and I decide, you know what, fuck it. Let's go in a studio and let's just have the conversations we always have about comedy, about music, about concerts, and about addiction and mental health. And in 10 episodes, we've only done, I think we're up to 12 episodes now. In 12 episodes, Chris's girlfriend dumped him. My girlfriend dumped me.
What? Why? What happened? They were banging each other.
No, it was about 2 months apart, I think, when his girlfriend dumped him. And he read the letter she left him when he came home to an empty house. He read the letter that she left him when she and wow. Valid reasons, which he owned. And then my girlfriend dumped me. Then Bert Kreischer performed an intervention on a 15-year-old kid who's from Sacramento, by the way, because he's the son of Dave Buckner, the original drummer of Papa Roach. And this kid's never even done drugs or drank alcohol. And Bert Kreischer gave him a preemptive intervention. And then I realized after reaching out to my girlfriend for the first time in 2 months that I broke up with her. And I had no idea that it was me that broke up with her. I was so scared of her leaving that I kept telling her. I kept telling her to go, despite the fact that she kept saying, I want us to go to couples counseling. And I said, why would you want to do that with a guy that you've said what you said to me? I thought she wanted to leave. And she had to spend 15 minutes with me on the phone to explain to me, Craig, you broke up with me. And that was one of the biggest mind fucks I've ever experienced in my life, to realize that it actually was me, and realize I thought I was the Brad Pitt character in this movie the whole time. And I suddenly realized I've been Ed Norton just punching myself in the face my whole life. And I didn't realize it. And I just, it was a big
vibe. And I think this whole thing started as a joke with Tim. And then I'm like, no, I genuinely like you. Like, I've never been such a fan of someone, but then we're both Irish Catholic and we grew up with mentally unstable moms. So we actually have a lot in common. And I'm like, no, now I'm in deep to where I'm like, this is like, I actually care. But okay, so I fuck things up. I sabotage myself when I get real emotions and real feelings. Sometimes I'm like, oh no, this would never really work, or we can't do this, or I say something rude, or I drop off. I hide in my cave for a day or two and sabotage things that I'm like, wait, you've wanted this. Why are you fucking this up? And I know I'm avoidantly attached. That's what I've had a couple therapists I want it, but I run away from it.
That phrase has come up so much. So it's this weird thing that it started out as two friends, me and Chris Kaler, trying to just be two friends talking about hanging out with our favorite rock stars and comedians and the experiences we're having at all these shows. And it's turned into serious therapy. I said something to Chris a few days ago where I said, and this is kind of weird to say this in the middle of an interview because I've only said this publicly to 2 or 3 people in my life, but I said, you want to know something really fucked up? when I was a teenager and like teens and 20s, I was very promiscuous, had a lot of sex, but I always wanted the women I had sex with to tell me that they loved me. I wanted them.
Yes.
Like, I know you're thinking that. I want to hear it. And they'd be like, I'm not doing that. I'm not, because they didn't want to be vulnerable. And when they would do it, I felt like I achieved something. And it was like the ultimate, like, and then I would lose interest, which is really fucked up. And Chris said to me, he goes, you know why? He goes, because you didn't get it from your mom. And I was like,
yep.
Holy fuck. Like that was wild. So I'm realizing now that I have to go back and look at these patterns that weren't that clear to me until literally in the last 10 days of my life. And that is what and we still have all these cool guests coming on and all these cool rock stars and great comedians, like, you know, these experiences with Bert Kreischer and Kerry King so far. And we're going to have everybody join us because I'm friends with every comedian. Chris and I are both friends with every rock star. Chris was genuinely starstruck by Kerry King, and he spends all of this week's episode just going like this and just watching him. And it's not until the very end of the episode he goes, hey, I just want to say one of the first albums I ever got. And he goes into this whole Slayer speech and say, man, thank you so much for the inspiration. But yeah,
my first time meeting him was October, and you would think I started in 2004. So I've wanted to meet him and interview him. And it wasn't until October at this last Aftershock Music Festival that I finally got Kerry King. And I was a little starstruck, of course. I mean, the big four are intimidating.
Yeah. And he himself in particular, I think of all four of those bands that we're talking about, and Dave Mustaine's kind of a weirdo, but Kerry King's very stoic. And I said, when he surprised us for this week's episode, I said at the time, and I mean this, over the years, there's been a couple times I've gone out to dinner with him and his wife, and I consider this a major achievement. Like, I love that feeling of making people laugh, but it is a massive achievement. It is the equivalent of crushing and getting a standing ovation at Showtime at the Apollo if you can get Kerry King to do this at dinner. That's it. Like,
because he's always full. He has his sunglasses on, at least when we had backstage the whole time, like this. And I'd ask him questions, and but I noticed when he went on The Bone right before me, 107.7 The Bone in San Francisco, and he didn't move too, and he didn't laugh. So I didn't take it personally because I like to be goofy. Like, that's my sexual and goofy. And he was not laughing, but I was like, okay, before this, he did this with Nikki Black too. So don't get offended. But oh my God. Oh, I could talk to you for days. I want to play Smash or Pass with you really quick because I have bands coming on at 2 p.m. Will you play Smash or Pass?
Sure, let's do it. So basically, I'm telling you if I would smash this person or pass.
Oh, the thing. Yeah. Whatever I ask you. Do you like it or do you not like it?
Okay. Do you like it or not like it? All right.
Yeah. Okay. South Park.
Smash.
Anchorman.
Smash.
Joe Rogan.
Smash.
Tariffs.
Pass.
RFK.
Hard pass. Hard pass.
Hard pass. You don't have a worm in your brain. Cats.
Smash.
Dive bars.
Smash.
New metal.
Smash.
Weird Al.
Big smash. Who doesn't love Weird Al?
Me too. I backup danced for him. It's a whole thing. I asked him to marry me. He would not leave his wife for me. It was a devastating breakdown. But, I was underage too. Okay, so I was backup dancing as a Nirvana cheerleader girl when I was 14, and I asked Weird Al to marry me, and he was my first rejection. But we ended up hanging out later in Austin, Texas, and talking about it. It was fine. But
are you in the music video for it?
No. Okay. I was on tour for the summer of 2000 to 2001 as a Nirvana cheerleader with him.
Really?
Yeah.
How'd you end up with that gig?
So I was a competitive dancer. I started at age 3, traveling around the world, competing in dance. And then my parents put me in acting, all of the normal, I'm fucked up as hell. And I did a lot of, little commercials, little B movies as high school bitch number 1. I did a lot of minor shit. And then I left Hollywood and got out of it when I was 28, got married, had a couple kids. I hide out in Sacramento. And I just started this podcast for fun because I miss, I got into the darkness of the world, the wild madness,
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so
it's good to have those experiences.
I loved it. And anytime you want to come back, you are welcome by the new podcast. You're super fun and easy to talk to. May 7th, though, Laughs Unlimited. And we're really excited. Come out and see you. Is there anything else you want to plug or announce as well?
No, just come out to the show at Laughs Unlimited. It's my first time in Sacramento in 20 years. I can't wait to do the show. Watch Beardo and Weirdo on all. You can listen to it on all the platforms where you get podcasts, Beardo and Weirdo, or the YouTube page, Beardo and Weirdo. And you'll see Chris Kale and I with this week's episode, surprise visit from Kerry King, which fucked all of us up. And you can see how nervous we are when he walks in the studio. And it's very strange to see just how nice of a guy he is and how he responds to that story. But and I want to make sure that you're at the show at Laughs Unlimited too on Wednesday. So I need you to be out there too.
Yes, I'm so down. I will be there. And I will put the links to all of your shows and everything so everybody can find you. Thank you so much for stopping by Stefs Rock Show.
Thank you. This was not at all anything I was planning on talking about, but that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. So